All right, this is Unit 8, Section 8.5 for Factoring Trinomials, Day 2. And so for Day 2, what we're going to do is look at what we did for 8.4. And when we set up 8.4, we did A times C, so something, two numbers that multiply to A times C and add to B. So we practiced splitting our middle term on our trinomial, which was whatever we had here. And we split this middle term into two new terms. Okay, so this is where we were with trinomials. Now, when we're going to be doing this on 8.5, what we didn't discuss was that every single time in 8.4, A was 1. And so today what we're going to look at is the exact same thing. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to the top number, add to the bottom number. We're going to split our two middle terms. But now A is going to be a number. And so this is just going to increase our value here. So we want to make sure that we're really paying attention to what A is as well. And so once we dive in here, our 8.5 factoring notes, the steps to factoring a trinomial, these are the same steps that we took in 8.4, but now we have a number out front. So when I go to split my middle term, I'm going to multiply 2 times 3. And so now we did 1 times 3 before because there was nothing in front of x squared. Now that we have a 2 up front, we're going to multiply the 2 times the 3 to get 6. So now I want to multiply, find two numbers. Excuse me, I felt that sneeze coming. All right, I want to multiply two numbers that multiply to 6 and add to 5. All right, so if I'm thinking about these factors of 6, I have 1 and 6. Okay, so I can make 5 here, but I would have to have subtraction. And since this is positive, they have to be the same sign. So another way that I can make 6 is 2 and 3. And those two multiply to make positive 6 and add to make positive 5. So when I go to split my 5x, I'm going to rewrite this as 2x and 3x. I'll bring down my positive 3 and I'll bring down my 2x squared. And now we're back to 8.3 where we were doing grouping. So I'll group my first two together and see what do they have in common. 2x squared plus 2x, I can take 2x out front, leaving me with 1x because my 2 is already taken out. I had taken 1 out here. And if I take the entire thing, my placeholder is 1 for the second term. Okay, plus, now looking at my second two terms, I have 3x plus 3, and so what they have in common I can take out of both is 3, leaving me with the x like I wanted here, and the plus 1 like I wanted here. Looking at my two terms now, I see a common binomial of x plus 1, and what's left over once I take out the x plus 1 is 2x plus 3. 2x from my first term, and a positive 3 from my second term. All right, we can always check our work by distributing. X times 2x gets me that 2x squared. X times 3 gets me that 3x. 1 times 2x gets me the 2x. 1 times 3 gets me the 3. Add those back together, I get my middle term. We can always go back to our previous step. All right, let's try it again. On number 2, we have 5x squared minus 17x plus 6. 1, 2, 3, we have a trinomial. So I'm going to split my middle term. 5 times 6 to get 30 here. So again, I'm taking 5 times 6 to get that 30. And I want it to add to a negative 17 so that when I split the negative 17, I have two terms that add up back to it. All right, so factors of 30, and we have 1 and 30. Okay, so I could make 31, I could make 29, but not 17. 2 and 15, all right, that's where I can make 30 and 17. But notice I need a negative 17. In order to get negative, I need them both to be negative here so that they multiply to keep my positive, but add together to make my negative. So once I found my negative 2 and my negative 15, I can check. These multiply to a positive 30 and add to the negative 17, and I can split that. Negative 2x and a negative 15x. Go back to what I had started here, and I can bring down my other two terms. And now I'm back to 4 terms, back to 8.3, grouping. So I'm going to look at my first two terms. I have 5x squared minus 2x. So 5 and 2 don't have any other common factors other than 1. And then I can take out 1x from there, leaving me the 5 because I didn't change it. So I took one of the x's, leaving me the minus 2 because the only thing I changed there was the x. Minus, grouping our second two, I have 15x plus 6. So 15 and 6, I can take a 3 out of both of those and divide it evenly. So 15 divided by 3 leaves me with the 5x that I wanted here. And if I take a minus out, I have a minus left over. 6 divided by negative 3 is negative 2. Looking at my two terms, I have a 5x minus 2 now in common as my common binomial that's in both. And when I take that out, I'm left over with x minus 3 as my final answer. All right, so here are my two for number 1 and number 2. We're just going to keep practicing this as we keep going. The harder part is when we bring in those negatives. We have to make sure that we're using our calculator to make that table and come up with factors there. All right, 1, 2, 3 trinomials, split the middle term. 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. So I need a number times a number that makes negative 24 and adds to negative 5. All right, so 24 here. I can do 1 and 24. Okay, but those aren't close enough to make 5. 2 and 12 were the next on my table. Not close enough to make 5. 3 and 8. Now I can make 5. All right, so what needs to be negative in order to keep the negative? The bigger number. So I'm going to put our 3 here and our negative 8 here. Split our middle term. We have 3x minus 8x would leave us with our negative 5x. Bring down the minus 4 here. Bring down our 6x squared with our positive 3. And now we're back to grouping. All right, so looking at my first two terms, 6x squared plus 3x. Okay, 6 and 3, I can take a 3 out of both of those. I have 2 x's here and 1 here, so I can take 1 out, leaving me with, okay, 6 divided by 3 is 2. I took one of the x's, leaving 1 behind. 3 divided by 3, I'm left with 1, and I took the x out. Okay, minus, now looking at the second terms, I have 8x minus 4, so 8 and 4 have a 4 in common, and if I take out the 4, 8 divided by 4, I'm left with 2. I didn't take the x out, so I'll bring that down. Negative 4 divided by itself is a positive 1, and remember when I take out this negative, I have to change the second sign so that when I distribute my negative back in, it goes back to negative. Here are my two terms with a common binomial now of 2x plus 1. And when I take out the 2x plus 1, I'm left over with 3x minus 4. Oop, that kind of looks wonky. The 3x from the first term here and the minus 4 from our second term here. And that should check out. And again, every time if I wanted to, I can check. 2x times 3x, there's my 6x squared. 2x times negative 4, there's my negative 8x. 1 times 3x, there's 3x. 1 times negative 4, there's my negative 4. Even if I check that pretty quickly, at least I can make sure all my signs are correct. Because again, once we get into this pattern, it becomes pretty quick, but we have to be careful on our signs. All right, number 4. 12x squared plus 11x minus 5. Okay, trinomial. So I'm going to multiply 12 times negative 5 and I get negative 60. I'm going to bring down my 11. And so I want two numbers that multiply to negative 60 but add to 11. All right, so if I think of negative 60 in my calculator, I'm going to start with 1 and 60. Okay, and this is going to have to be a positive and a negative, so when I subtract or add, that's going to be 61 or 59. Can't work that. 2 and 30. Okay, if I add, it's 32. If I subtract, it's 28. Not going to work. 3 and 20 is my next one in my table. So 3, I can make 23, or subtract, I can make 17. I'm getting closer, but not quite there. And 4 and 15, I can add together to make 19, or I got excited because I can subtract 15 minus 4 to get 11. All right, so these are going to be my two numbers, and in order to keep this positive, the smaller one needs to be the negative. All right, so I can check that multiplies to make negative 60 and adds to make the positive 11. There's only one combination that will work. So if you think you have a different combo, check your signs. So I have a negative 4x, and if I add that with 15x, it goes back to the 11x. Bring down my 12x squared, and bring down the minus 5. And now I'm ready to group. So now we're back to GCF on the first two terms, 12 and 4. I can take a 4 out of both of those, so I'll take a 4 out front. 2 x's here and an x here, so I can take 1 out of both of them. 12 divided by 4 is 3. If I took one of them out, I left one in between, or one behind there. Negative 4 divided by 4 is a negative 1, and I took the x out, so 3x minus 1 is what's left over. Plus, now looking at the second group, 15x minus 5, the 15 and the 5 have a 5 that I can take out of both. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and I didn't take the x. Negative 5 divided by 5 is a negative 1, and now we have our matching binomials that we wanted in our two terms. I can take out the 3x minus 1 here from both of those terms, and what I'm left over from the first term is 4x, and from the second term, positive 5. And so this will be my factored trinomial. Checking our work, 3x times 4x, there's my 12x squared. 3x times 5, there's my 15x. Negative 1 times 4x, there's my negative 4x. Negative 1 times 5, there's negative 5. So again, as long as I'm careful with these numbers and I can check my work, I already know I have 100% on this problem. And so the nice thing about this unit is that you can always distribute back out to check your work. All right, we'll look at number 5 and number 6 here. 1, 2, 3 terms, so I have a trinomial. And as soon as I see 3 terms, I'm drawing out my x here. 3 times 10 will get me a positive 30, and I'll bring down a negative 11 that I want to combine my two numbers to. So on 30, what factors of 30 add to negative 11? 1 and 30 is first on my list. And again, if I want a negative, I have to be adding or subtracting here, not adding. So I can make 29 there. 2 and 15, okay, 2 and 15 I can make 13 when I subtract, but not 11. 3 and 10 is my next number, and if I subtract, I can make 7, so that one's not going to work. Okay, so the next one, 4 doesn't go evenly, 5 and 6. Okay, I can make a negative 11 if they're both negative there. And so I think I misspoke when I said I had to have one that was negative, because this is a positive, meaning the signs have to be the same. So as soon as I saw the 5 and 6, I got excited about the 11, but both of them need to be negative. So I have a negative 5 and a negative 6, which makes negative 11. And if I multiply a negative times a negative, that's where I get our positive value here. So I can rewrite negative 11x as negative 5x minus 6x. Bring down the positive 10 here. Bring down your 3x squared from the first term. And now we're back to grouping. 3x squared minus 5x. Okay, 3 and 5 don't have anything in common. And x squared and x, I can take 1x out. So I didn't change the 3 and I took an x. I didn't change the -5 and I took the x. So when I distribute that back in, I'm giving another x to get 2 and another x to get 5x here. Minus, let's look at 6x and 10. So on 6x and 10, I can take out a 2 from both of those. So again, if I take out a negative, I have to change that sign because 6 divided by a -2 there, okay, that's where I'm taking this out. 6 divided by our 2, we get our 3x here. 10 divided by a -2, that's where we would get a -5 here for that second term. Check your signs if you want to. At every step, we can distribute back in. Negative times a positive, there's my negative. Negative times a negative, there's my positive. All right, so I do have my matching binomial now when I look at my two terms. So I have 3x minus 5 that I can take out of both of those times. I can look at my first term and I can take out the x here and then the -2 from the second term, leaving me with 3x minus 5 times x minus 2. On number 6, 1, 2, 3 terms, so I'm going to split the middle term, taking 8 times 3, giving me 24 here. That adds to a -10. All right, I'm not going to make that same mistake that I had before. This is a positive number and a negative number here. So I know I'm looking for 2 negatives. So 1 and 24, those are too far apart to make 10. I would make 25. 2 and 12, I get excited, except for I know that they both have to be negative like I did here. And if I wanted to make a -10, I could just do 2 minus. But if I did 2 and 12, I would have to have them both be negative in order to keep this positive. So it's tempting, but it's out. 3 and 8, if they were both negative, would be 11. And the next one on our list is 4 and 6. Ding, 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 ding. We're going to have a -4 here and a -6 here. This is the only combination that makes a +24 and a -10. So I have -4x here, -6x here. Bring down our +3 and bring down our 8x squared. Back to grouping here. I have 8x and -4x. So I'm seeing a 4 in common and 2 x's and 1 x, so 1 x in common here. 8 divided by 4 gets me 2, and I took one of the x's. -4 divided by 4 is a -1, and I took the x out. Minus, now group the second two. 6x plus 3, 3 goes into both of those, into 6 and into itself. 6 divided by 3 gets me the 2x here. 3 divided by -3 gets me a -1. I'm running into my space here, but we have a matching binomial. If I distributed, make sure that we're changing that sign right there. So I'll bring out my 2x minus 1 from the binomial that matches on both terms here. And what's left over is 4x from the first term and a -3 on the second term. And so remember, on each one of these, we can distribute back and check. 3x times x, 3x squared. 3x times -2, -6x. -5 times x, -5x. -5 times -2 is a +10. And we could check it on this one as well. All right, on number 7 and number 8, we're practicing again. We're getting lots of good repetitions here. So 4 times 1 for my trinomial here gets me 4, and I wanted to add to a -4. Okay, so my only factors of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. I don't think we would need our calculator for this, but our table could produce that as well. So we're trying to make it a -4 here. So just like I did before, positive up here, negative here, they both have to be negative. So the only way I can do that is with a 2 and a 2 here. -2 makes a +4. -2 adds to a -4. A lot of negative going on there. So I'm going to bring down a -2x with another -2x so that it combines to the -4x there. I'll bring down my plus 1 and my 4x squared. And then from here, I'm grouping. 4x squared and 2x have a 2 and an x in common, leaving me with 2x to go back to 4x squared, and leaving me with a negative 1 to go back to a negative 2x. Minus, and then when I look at these last two terms, 2 and 1 only have 1 in common, and x, well, I can't take any x out of this second term. So the only thing they have in common is a 1. So negative 1 times 2x gets me back to the negative 2x, and negative 1 times a negative 1 is what would get me back to the positive here. Once I have my matching binomials, now I can look at taking out the common binomial here. 2x minus 1, and what's left over from the first term is 2x, and from the second term is minus 1. Before, I almost boxed this up, and this would be okay if we turn this in, but what I just noticed is that these are also the same binomial. So anytime I have something that's repeated times itself, I could actually use this as an exponent saying, hey, I have this times itself twice. And I could rewrite that as 2x minus 1 squared. All right, on number 8. So now we're looking at 6 times negative 12. Okay, so if I multiplied that, I get negative 72 for my calculator. And I want those to add 2. I'm going to write in a 1 there. So as I look at my factors of negative 72, I have 1 and 72 in my chart. Okay, those are not close enough to make 1. One's positive, one's negative for my negative here. 2 and 36 are getting closer, but I can make 38 or 34. It's out. Let's check. 3, I gotta actually put this one in. 3 and 24. Again, we're getting closer, but not close enough to make 1. 4 and 18. 14 or 22, out. Man, okay, we're going to have to keep going. 5 doesn't go in. 6 and 12. Closer. We can make 6 or 18. 7 doesn't go into it. And then we had 8 does. 8 goes into it 9 times. There we go. Now those are close enough to make 1. And so if I look at my signs, how do I make a positive 1? I need the 8 to be negative, keeping the bigger number the sign of the bottom one. So I can rewrite this as negative 8x plus 9x. The positive 9 subtracts the 8, making that the 1x here. Bring down the negative 12 on the outside and bring down the 6x squared from the front. And then we're ready to group. All right, so 6x squared and negative 8x. So 8 and 6 have 2 in common. 2x is here, 1x in here, and I hope we're seeing that pattern of bringing an x out in the front term always. And then what's left over? 6 divided by 2 is 3. We took 1 of the x, so 1 remains. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, and we took the x out. Plus 9 and negative 12 have a 3 in common, and it should match this. 9 divided by 3 is 3x. Negative 12 divided by 4 is, divided by 3 is negative 4. So with our two problems here, we have our matching binomials that we can take out in front. 3x minus 4 and 2x from the first one and positive 3 from the second one. And again, let me check my work real quick. 3x times 2x, there's 6x squared. 3x times 3, there's 9x. Negative 4 times 2x, there's negative 8x. Negative 4 times 3, there's negative 12. All right, so when we check that, we end up getting back to what we started with there. So the last part of this unit, on 8.6, we'll kind of review everything that we had been looking at. But the last part is putting it all the way back together. So 8, 4 is related to 8, 5 because it's the exact same thing, but now we have an A out front. 8, 5 is related to 8.3 because that's the factor by grouping. And the very beginning, we started with GCFs. So now when we look at this, we want to first look for and then factor out the GCF. So anytime I come to a number, I can make my process of splitting the middle term easier if I take out the numbers first. I would rather look for something that these three have in common and take it out than multiply this and have a huge number out front. So right off the bat, when I look at 10, 75, and 35, I'm thinking 5 in common. 5 times 2 with the x squared coming down. 75, I can figure out how many times 5 goes into it by dividing it. So 75 divided by 5, I can bring down the 15x. And 35 divided by 5, I have 7. And now this 5 is part of my answer when we get down here. Okay, we'll end up with our factored form here. But instead of 10 times 35, which is 350, and kind of like, oh my, like, that's crazy. I don't know what kind of face that was. Now we have 2 times 7. So 2 times 7 is much more manageable. I don't want to find all the factors of 350. There's so many. 14, now we're cooking. So I want factors of 14 that add up to 15. So as soon as I write that out, I get my match right away. Here's 1, here's 14. Multiplies to make 14, adds to make 15. So if I split the middle term, I'll take my 1x and my 14x here and bring those down with the 7 here and the 2x squared from out front, making sure I'm putting a positive 1x there. And now we're back to our 8.1. Now we're grouping, or I'm sorry, 8.3 where we're grouping. All right, so 2x squared and 1x. 2 and 1 don't have anything other than 1 in common, so I'll just take out the x, leaving me 2x plus 1 plus 14 and 7. I can take a 7 out of both of those, leaving me with the same 2x plus 1. And now looking at my matching binomial, again, I brought my 5 down. It's part of my answer, but it doesn't affect how I factor this trinomial that was left over. The 2x plus 1 is what I'm matching here. And what's left over is the x plus 7 that we would have there. All right, so kind of keep that in mind that when we go to check, our 5 gets distributed in here. So when I check 2x times x, I'm still checking here. 2x times 7, oops, sorry, I'm checking here. Here's my 14x. 1 times x, there's my 1x. 1 times 7, there's my 7. If I want to go all the way back to the beginning, I have to multiply those back in to get back here. 2 times the 5 gets me the 10. 5 times the 15 gets me back to 75. And 5 times 7 gets me back to 35. This is the hardest we could get in this unit as far as looking at factoring. This has a GCF and we had to split the middle term. All right, on number 2. First look for a GCF. So we want to look at our numbers and say, okay, is there something we can take out of all 3 of these? So I could multiply 12 times negative 24 or times negative 2 to get the negative 24. And that's not so big like the 350, but if I take the 2 out that they have in common, it gets even smaller. 2x squared, I took the 2 out, leaving x, took the 2 out, leaving a negative 1. Now when I go to split my middle term, 6 times negative 1 is negative 6, that adds to 1. So as I'm splitting 6, I can start to look for only these 2 groups that I could check for. And the only ones that are 1 away are 2 and 3, making the smaller one negative, so I keep it positive. This 2 is still going to be part of my final overall answer. And so I will circle and drag it down here and already have it written, ready to go. As I start splitting this middle term, looking for the common binomial. bring down the minus 1, bring down the 6x squared. All right, so then when we're grouping here, 6x squared and negative 2x have a 2 in common, and that common x, 2 here, 1 here, take 1 out of both. 6 divided by 3 is 2, or 6 divided by 2 is 3. I'm giving away my answer there. Negative 2x divided by 2x is a negative 1, plus, look at 3x minus 1. Well, as soon as I see 1, the only thing I can take out is a 1 there. But that's what I had left over is 3x minus 1, which is my matching binomial. 3x minus 1 will come out front, and 2x is left over with a plus 1 here. My 2 I already brought down. Don't forget your GCF. If you leave this off, your final answer is incorrect. You've done all this work and still lost a point. Even though you did it up here, it's part of our final answer. All right, so some of this is just putting together all those ideas that we've practiced in this unit. We will do that again for 8.6 before we take our test over factoring. Again, this is a skill that we want to make sure that we're really good at because it will be continuing to come out as we go into intermediate, algebra 2, pre-calc, calc, everything beyond this class. All right, let me know if you have any questions.